Hello everybody, Melanie here and welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well. I plan to be moving to the States very soon, so hence why I haven't been making videos. I've been quite busy preparing for my move, and I'm still answering my emails regularly, so if you've got any questions about my counselling services, feedback for my videos, just stay in contact. I will respond most of the time. My email address is in the video description below. Okay, so on with today's video. I want to make a few videos on this topic, and this is about the dangers of fantasy living. Whether it's getting conned in a financial scheme, whether it's getting conned in a romantic relationship, it's very easy to get duped, to get suckered, to get conned when it comes to relationships, and when it comes to work and financial matters and with friendships. It's more likely to happen if you are prone to getting lost in fantasy living. It's very understandable to get engaged in fantasy living as a way to escape the pain of suffering, of not being happy with being in your own skin, not being able to do anything about it and feeling trapped. There's so many reasons why we want to escape through fantasizing, whether it's daydreaming on a regular basis, to the point maybe when it's a bit too much, to being easily sucked into relationships which seem very romantic and seem to offer a lot, but it's a bit too good to be true, and it's harder to see the warning signs when we are clouded with fantasy. Basically, we are less likely to see things for as they truly are when we have rose-tinted glasses on. We choose to put blinkers on. Symbolically, we choose to put blinkers on so that we don't see anything outside of our chosen perspective, of our chosen narrative. We see what we want to see. And we are less likely to spot people who are using us. We are less likely to spot people who are not good for us, who are too dysfunctional for us, when we aren't seeing reality for as it really is. The more we can see reality for what it is, the better we can make decisions that are for self-preservation, that are better choices to improve our health, both physical, emotional, and mental health. It's when we get lost in a narrative, when we get stuck in a story, when we're only seeing things through a particular lens. And what motivates us, what fuels this, what keeps us in place is a complete reluctance, not just reluctance, a hard no, I do not want to face my pain. In avoiding suffering and denying what's actually happening, and that is you're not happy. You're not happy with yourself. Maybe you're not happy with the choices that you've made. Maybe you're in a lot of pain, and it's too hard to bear. It's too hard to sit with what's actually happened. This is why so many of my clients tell me that they struggle with the thoughts, intruding thoughts of the good times, the pull, the yearning to reminisce about the good times with your dysfunctional ex, because the reality of what's happened, and that is you've been dumped, you've had your heart broken, you've been hurt. It's too much to bear. Someone who you care so much about treats you in such a cruel way that it's a coping mechanism, getting lost in what was. And the more time we spend revisiting memories, be they the good times or the dark times, they change each time very subtly, and then we end up getting lost in them. And how does this serve you? If you can relate to this, by the way, how is this serving you to be getting lost in daydream about what happened? Understandably, it's there to soothe you because the pain of what's happened is too much to bear. It's very hard to understand why someone can treat you in very different ways. Now, this is what I want to make clear, that fantasizing and daydreaming is a good thing. Yes, it is fantastic to engage in your creative imagination. Flex those creative muscles. The problem is spending too much time in it. As with life, everything needs to be balanced. The passive and the active. Daydreaming, fantasizing to get creative, and then actually whittling it down into a doable goal and actioning it so that it becomes a living reality. So time must actually be spent in daydreaming sometimes, fantasizing about what you want, what you could have, what life could be like for you, how you could be. But make no mistake, there is a big difference between fantasizing and daydreaming within realistic parameters versus fantasizing and daydreaming as a way to avoid, as a form of procrastination. Right, they're two different things. You need to keep your daydreams within realistic boundaries. And if you do tend to make unrealistic goals, it's very good to notice this within yourself, because you've got to ask, is this a form of procrastination when I'm making goals that are way too attainable? Am I reliving a cycle from the past when I set myself up for failure so that I can blame myself? Well, what happens a lot, especially if you're a perfectionist and you don't see yourself as good enough. So it's all good to daydream, to enjoy the process of getting creative about how you can make things different for yourself. If you're not happy with your life, you can change it. You really can. And the first important step is to get inspired about what it could be like, how you could be like. So get involved in that, your creative imagination strategies, however you want to visualize your future, but don't get lost in it. And I will make videos on this in the future, because there are many parts of the act of will, from being inspired about what to do and all the different stages to implement it and to action it and to make it a habit. But for now, the first stage is daydreaming to get inspired, but know when enough is enough. And this is an important skill to learn, all right? The skill of putting healthy boundaries in place. Know your limits, understand your limits, and be aware if there is a part of you that wants to overpush yourself, because you are doomed for failure. Make realistic goals for yourself. There really is no rush. It is a much wiser idea for you to get healthy routines in place. And if you are recovering from an unhealthy, dysfunctional relationship, then all the more reason to take your time setting up a new foundation, a new way for you to relate to yourself and to others. And if you were suckered into a romantic relationship through being sold a fantasy, well, listen up, because you need to be aware of this. If you have a tendency to be suckered in to a relationship with someone who just gives you the time of day, especially if you're attracted to that person, people with whom you're attracted to are very good at convincing you. They're very good at persuading you. And this is known in psychology. If you see someone that you're attracted to, at some level, we associate them with the divine masculine, the divine feminine. It's the beloved. And it in itself is a transcendental experience. And if you're experiencing pain, suffering, if you just hate your life and you're having a moment of just divine beauty, and just for those few moments, everything feels really good. You feel good. It is so easy to get lost in a co-daydream, a shared daydream, particularly when it's with someone who has BPD, because they too are suffering and they want to escape their reality, and more often than not love getting swept in fantasy, and they're very good at building castles in the sky. Oh yes, they are. And it's on you as well for believing it. Their success at conning people into relationships is only as good as your willingness to believe everything they say. When I talk about being conned into a relationship, what I mean is being sold a potential, what could be, and it's pushed on you. You're sold it, and he or she seemed really into it, and you fell for it. You got really into it. You became emotionally very invested in this, and then it got cruelly taken away from you, and you are still invested in this. This is what I mean. The feeling of being conned is something that many of my clients share with me, and they feel embarrassed. They feel ashamed to say this because they still love their partner. And it didn't seem like at the time their borderline ex was actually conning them. They seemed real. It's just they're wired to do things differently. And when they want to go, they want to go. And you're left with a broken heart and a feeling of being conned, and the fantasy has just been ripped apart. So then we retreat to our imagination, and then we ponder, we reflect, we get stuck in the memories of what happened, of the good times. And the dangers of living in this state is that you end up chasing a ghost. You end up missing the person who was, and how it was, how the relationship was. But are you really living if you're just remembering and being stuck in your head with the fantasies? And the dangers of this is that it's very isolating, because people don't really want to hear you going on and on about your ex, do they? So you end up just isolating yourself so that you're not bothering others, and you can just be lost in your daydreams about it. You won't be judged because no one needs to know. And this is dangerous, because if you find yourself doing this and getting lost in daydreaming about the relationship and what was and what could have been, is that you're just prolonging your suffering. If you want to move on, you need to stop thinking about this so much. However, thinking about this a lot is very normal. And this is the pain of managing a dysfunctional breakup. On the one hand, you're thinking about it a lot because you want to make sense of what happened. As part of PTSD, our thoughts replay over certain things. We get memories, flashbacks, trying to figure out what happened. It's just shock. It's a shock response. It's a trauma response. But the problem with talking about it so much and thinking about it so much is that the impulse to keep thinking about it becomes stronger and stronger. Any habit that we choose to replay over and over again becomes more deeply entrenched in our mind. Remember that, okay? You scratch their itch, it will get itchier. And if you're struggling with this, then actually a reality check is a very sobering experience to help motivate you to move on and to let go of the daydreams and the fantasies. Sitting with the reality of what's happened, to actually sit with the feels, the pain of what you've been through, all right? To balance the anger at how you've been treated with compassion for the reason why he or she is like this. To not get caught up too much in both means that you can be balanced in your approach and feel everything. Your emotions are there to guide you, to inform you about a dangerous environment of a risky person. And if this person is putting you in a state of fight or flight, this isn't good for your body. It's not healthy to be chronically adrenalized and to have chronically elevated levels of cortisol, to be walking around on eggshells. So if you can relate to this, if you have a tendency to get lost in fantasy, be honest with yourself. Get a pen and paper and write down what are the ways in which you get lost in fantasy and why. There's many reasons why we do it. One common reason is as a form of procrastination. We don't want to do the thing that we have to do right now, and so we end up just thinking about what we're going to do later that day, what we can put on our social media, what we can say to this person, getting lost in things we could do and reflecting on things that have happened, neither of which are keeping you in the present moment. All right, so if you do want to improve, if you want to become better self-disciplined, if you want to achieve self-mastery, all right, it involves being present, all right, actually being present to what's happening in the moment. If you want to keep yourself safe, if you want to prevent yourself from dating, Future dysfunctional people, if you want to be better acquainted with your body, all right, if you want to be healthier, literally everything can be improved upon if you practice being more present. And it's so simple, but yet life is designed to distract us, is it not? With phones, TVs, computers. So it's the best daily habit, in my opinion, is to implement some sort of daily practice, even better hourly practice in which you are being present, whether it's through mindfulness, meditation, doing an activity in which you are fully present, whether it's an active thing or a passive thing, such as watching the sunset. The more self-aware you can become of your tendencies to get lost in fantasy, the better chances you have to protect yourself from being conned in the future. It is very, very wise to become better acquainted with your tendencies to get lost in fantasy, because it means that you can be better alert and more present to warning signs when you meet someone in the future who perhaps is trying to convince you of a story, or trying to sell you a story, or whatever it is, and you're thinking, something doesn't feel quite right here. Seems a lot like wishful thinking. This is good, all right, to take time to pause and think, what's happening here? What's actually happening here? The more you can improve upon this, the more you can develop the skill to do this. Discernment, being present, questioning and discernment. This is a life skill that will save you. It really will. And yeah, it's important to apply this to future dates, and not just with romantic relationships, but people who are trying to suggest a working relationship in which they can make you lots and lots of money. And you're like, sounds a bit too good to be true. Unfortunately, when it's a bit too good to be true, there's a reason for it. So these are all skills to help you have a reality check. But the thing is, it's hard though, isn't it? For many of us, especially if we've been traumatized, if we've been wounded, it's really hard to face reality. And the more we try to escape it, the harder it is when we finally have to face it. And life will do that. Life has a way of forcing you to face your shit and deal with your issues. You can't keep running away from them. And the more you keep running, the harder it is when you trip over and hit your head on the floor. Symbolically speaking, obviously. Although to make a point, when we're distracted, we're more likely to injure ourselves. So there we go. Right, I'm going to leave it there. My next video coming up is about the dangers of fantasy when it comes to online dating. Oh yes, it's very dangerous territory, online dating. I'm not talking about social media in general or the internet in general. I specifically mean dating apps and online dating sites. So if you're interested in that, stick around, watch out for that video. If you've got any comments, questions, feedback, I would love to hear it. Do email me. My email address is in the video description. All right, well, I'll leave it there. Bye-bye for now.